The next global battle will not be fought over oil, but over minerals. And Kenya happens to be at the center of this conversation. A few years ago, many countries did not pay attention to Kenya. But today, countries like US, France, China, and very powerful countries in the world are looking to do business and partner with Kenya. Welcome to the Finance Podcast. We bring you finance and economic updates of things that are happening in Africa and the world at large. Let's dive in and break things down. So on the 15th of June to the 17th of June, the G7 summit was held in Canada. The G7 summit brought together leaders from the world's largest advanced economies. Most people are wondering, what's Kenya doing there when they are not among the G7? Well, President Ruto was being invited as a guest speaker. At the G7 summit, when President Ruto was called up to give his own speech, he gave a very, very strong speech, making Kenya look like the center of the global breakthrough. That's because Kenya just discovered a new mineral on their land, niobium mineral. Well, I'm very sure that your government and top technology companies have heard about niobium, because niobium is a rare metal used in aerospace manufacturing, electric vehicles, military equipment, high-strength steel production, wind turbines, advanced electronics, and energy infrastructure. That is, if a small amount of niobium is added to steel, it can do great work. In today's world, in modern economy, niobium is considered as a strategic resource, meaning that it is very important. This alone has given China enormous influence over our global chain supply. And because of this, the US and their allies have become very concerned about depending on one country for everything. And as a result of this, the Western nations have placed themselves as an alternative, meaning if you cannot use China, you can use the Western nation. This has made Africa their battleground. Many analysts are saying that the US is trying to stop China from monopolizing Africa. Meanwhile, others are saying that the US is just scared of China dominating the world in the next 10 years to come. Now, the competition is not about who owns the minerals. It is about who processes and who controls the markets of these minerals. And at this point, this is where President Ruto's strategy becomes very fascinating, because how did he even come up with that kind of plan? So when he went for the summit, instead of him saying he wants to partner with China or he wants to partner with the US or UK, rather, he placed Kenya as a very fertile land for investment and processing. He's trying to leverage on all sides. Think about it. Kenya understands that everyone wants something. He's trying to make sure that Kenya is the one that gains at the end of all of this competition. So instead of him trying to align with one country, he has decided to align with different countries and secure better deals for Kenya. According to the Standard newspapers, America has struck a preliminary mineral deal with Kenya, securing a foothold in one of the world's largest untapped rare earth deposits, worth about $62.4 billion. The deal edges out China in a critical race for resources vital to modern technology and national defense. The until now secret agreement announced by President William Ruto on the sidelines of the G7 summit in France would require minerals including niobium and rare earths to be processed domestically, making a fundamental departure. This means that America and Kenya have already signed a deal, but then just from the sidelines of what President Ruto has said, nothing has actually started. Historically, it's always been known that African countries just export their raw materials and then go back to buy the finished product at higher prices. But then President Ruto has just changed the model. So he made it clear, if anybody wants to make a deal with Kenya, you have to build the refinery in Kenya.
I gave President Trump an example. We are finalizing an agreement with America on some of our rare earth and critical minerals, and we have agreed that the minerals will be processed in Kenya, as opposed to what the other relationship. We've agreed with them on what is mutually beneficial between Kenya and the United States. And President Trump and the American administration.
This is a very great news for Kenyans. If you want to do any deal with us that requires our minerals, it means that you have to build a refinery in our country where we can process our raw materials at home. Everybody is so happy, but then there is a part that nobody's talking about. Most times, to build a refinery can take about 3 to 4 years. In worst cases, even more. So President Ruto coming out to say that for them to do anything with their raw materials, they must build a refinery. They can start the process, but we don't know how long it will take to build these refineries. Many projects looks impressive on camera, but once the cameras are off, that's where the real thing begins. The truth is, Rome was not built in a day, and so this refinery cannot be built overnight.
It is not done until it is done. Rome was not built in a day. Success is not a flash. It is built incrementally. And I believe that we are making the necessary steps towards solving some of the most pressing global challenges. And I think the mere appreciation that three significant things inform this meeting. Number one, global solidarity and new partnerships. There is a realization that the international architecture, the UN as we have known it, is no longer fit for purpose. This has been our position. And therefore, there is a reality that people are living with. Many people thought, for example, that you can solve global conflicts.
Away from the fact that the US government cannot build the refinery in a year or two, let's look at the fact that the new model that President Ruto wants to adapt, which is find the raw materials here, process it here, and then we sell it here too, and make our own good income, is going to bring a lot of waste materials, air pollution, water pollution, land degradation. Now, no one's talking about all of this. We're all looking at the good side. Does Kenya have what it takes to manage the risk if this refinery comes to Kenya? President Ruto's appearance on the G7 summit was a signal that Kenya is ready to sit on the table. The opportunity is real and the risk is also real.
We just concluded Africa Forward Summit in Nairobi last month. What was the conversation? The conversation was there is need for a paradigm shift in our engagement with partners. It is no longer about aid. This is going to be about partnerships. It is no longer about assistance and dependency. It's going to be about sovereign equality. This is no longer going to be about extraction. It's going to be about investments.
All eyes are on Kenya. The decision that the president of Kenya is going to take in the next few years will determine if Kenya is going to come out of the shell or if they will still continue to export their raw material. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Do well to like, share, and subscribe for more finance content like this. Until next time.